Welcome to the Sales Squared Podcast, your destination for leveling up in sales, marketing, and business development.
Dollar bill, y'all.
Join us to hear real entrepreneurs with real experiences, engaging with real experts from the world of sales, business, and entrepreneurship. And now for another Sales Squared Value Bomb.
What is going on? So today's episode is all about negotiation. So I know that a lot of you guys at home, you're interested in sales and business development and communication, how to get that edge during that process. So today we talk all about negotiation with none other than a negotiation expert, Brandon Voss. So these negotiation strategies are from the Black Swan Group, and this group, they take their strategies not from just business, not from just day-to-day life, but from the FBI, from life or death situations. So we learn all about what it takes to be a successful negotiator, how to construct negotiations in a way that's going to give you the best possible outcome, and a few really powerful tactics on how to get the edge during that negotiation process. We also talk about why you never need to accept a bad deal, and by adopting a few of these strategies, then you will definitely have the edge over anyone you're in negotiation with. So, negotiation, it's all about collaboration. It's all about working with your counterpart, and it's all about being able to put yourself in the shoes of the other person that you're dealing with and understand things from their point of view. When you can put these things together, then great things begin to happen. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hey everyone, I'm here today with Brandon Voss from the Black Swan Group. So the Black Swan Group is headed up by Chris Voss, who actually wrote the book Never Split the Difference, which is a really, really great book on negotiation tactics, actually taken from FBI hostage situations. So a lot of protocols that were used there and then actually translated into the business world. So Brandon is an expert in negotiation types over at the Black Swan Group. He heads up training and operations, so really instrumental part of the work going on over there. So Brandon, thanks for jumping on with me today, and tell us a little bit more about the Black Swan Group and your role there.
Very good, Cameron. And by the way, thank you very much for having me. My technical title is a director of training and operations. And essentially what that means is I wear many hats, but that's pretty commonplace here at the Black Swan Group. I mean, we're a small shop for the most part. Between my father, myself, and my wife, who's also our director of marketing, we handle a lot of the basic day-to-day stuff. And we have another instructor that also is currently working on his own book on leadership and the relationship to negotiation. And he teaches virtual classes with us and also does a lot of live training as well. So, I wear a lot of hats, do a lot of stuff, write content, build proposals, build instruction blocks for clients, handle tax documents. It's everything under the sun. I got to hand it in some kind of way or another.
Awesome. Yeah, really important role, it sounds like. So what I really love about the Black Swan Group is obviously the original methodologies that are actually taken from Chris's experience in the in FBI hostage situations, and really I guess life or death situations too, and how you've helped to bring that into the business world as well, and create basically a methodology for negotiating in the business world, which is really important, but also in life too. We're all negotiating every day, right? With our family, with our friends, even if it's on a small scale. So I guess my first question, Brandon, would be, what is negotiation to you?
Well, first of all, Cameron, I totally agree. I mean, we are negotiating all the time. And to quote Chris and the book directly, the most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know you're in. Mm-hmm. We negotiate a lot more often than we realize in general. And as far as what negotiation means to me, and I'll speak to this really from a personal standpoint, but also speak to Never Split the Difference. But every single negotiation is an opportunity to make yourself smarter. We really focus on, information gathering. We say that negotiation is synonymous to navigation, and every interaction is a chance to make yourself smarter. When we work with clients, a lot of times where we start is one of the hardest things for you to do is going to be to let go of your own justifications and your own data. Because especially up front, the other side doesn't care what your data and justifications are.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, when you walk out of the room, you should have a list somewhere between 5 and 10 things, a bulleted list of what you learned in that negotiation that you didn't know before you came in the room. And if you can't make that list, chances are you probably should revisit that conversation.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And it's all about a growth mindset, right? If you can go into every situation thinking, how can we learn from this? Can we grow from this? Then even if it doesn't go to plan, if it's not successful in the negotiation, at least you've learned something. So, you've still won. So no, I totally agree with that. And I think it's a great explanation of what a negotiation is and should be. So I guess, obviously it's great to learn from negotiations, but it's also great to have a successful negotiation, right? And get the outcome that we want to get, be it in business, be it in, if you're at the car dealership and you're trying to negotiate with, the salesman on the price, wherever it is. What do you think makes a successful negotiator?
What makes a successful negotiator? Well, someone that is fluent in the use of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And even a better way to put it, and guys, for the gentlemen that are listening, you are not going to like this, but if you want a natural point of leverage in every negotiation that you're in, you should be born a woman. And that's the reality of it. When it comes to emotional intelligence, women are naturally built to be emotionally intelligent, and they start practicing it as soon as they can speak. While boys are still running around screaming at each other, playing chicken on the schoolyard, smacking into one another at recess, the girls are having tea parties, and they're already exercising emotional intelligence at 3 years old. And it's tough, but it's reality. They're more practiced at it by the time they become professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's emotional intelligence is one of those things that we can, always be improving. And I think having a role in, a communication style role in business, if you're, you're in sales, if you're in a client facing role, it's a really great opportunity to actually really progress very, very fast in that negotiation. But it totally makes sense, right? As boys, we're running around, we're on the playground, we're playing football or soccer or whatever it is. And, we're not actually talking with each other. And, it seems cool back then to not really talk about our feelings and whatnot. But when we look at it now in terms of negotiation, it's pretty cool to be able to, negotiate your way out of any situation. So I think, that totally makes sense too. So in Never Split the Difference, Brandon, it talks a lot about how information is really, really crucial, right? So when we're in a negotiation, if we can actually get all of the information that we can from the other side, from the whole situation, then we're going to be much, much better informed to actually navigate our way through that process. So do you have any tips, any tactics for gathering more information from our counterparts or from our colleagues or whatever it is during that negotiation?
Well, if you can create, and really we say like a influence in negotiation starts with the creation of a series of emotional moments. And that's really where, emotional intelligence plays a big part. Not only being aware of your own emotions, but then being aware of your counterpart's emotions, and then being able to influence those emotions directly, right? What are the things that you're saying that dump dopamine and serotonin into their brain that make them consider something from a different angle, right? You can actually control that. But yeah, as far as tips go, right, you definitely want to focus on information. If you don't make yourself smarter, you're just not doing a good job. And also, when you are genuinely, or at least create the feeling of genuine interest in someone's, whatever their emotional state is, whatever information they have, whatever reasons that they feel like things are unfair, or they feel like they should get a lower price or a higher price, or they have an emotional attachment to a business that they've built from the ground up and they're having trouble letting go of it, whatever the case may be, when they feel that you've shown genuine interest in whatever those issues are. And then secondly, you can reiterate it to them. You can say it back to them in what we call the summary format to get to a "that's right" out of the book, right? When you can get to that point, that's when you can really start to shift someone's mindset. And in order to reach that point where you're getting to a "that's right," and you're summarizing someone so well that all they can think is, you know what, that's exactly it. That's exactly how I see it. That's exactly how I feel. When you can get them to that point, then you're moving in the right direction. But, rule number one is you got to have the information to get them there first. So, while summary is important, you mentioned mirrors. We've talked offline about how much you love mirrors and how it gets into people's mindset and and gets into the interaction and can really be helpful for both sides. I'd probably say that's in the top three. If you can start to get really good at mirrors, then you're going to get a long way, and you're going to get there a lot faster than you realize.
Yeah, no doubt. And mirrors, as I said offline, Brandon, it was one of my favorite techniques from Never Split the Difference. And I think what I really love about it is that by using a mirror, you're really, you're subconsciously telling yourself that you really want to learn more about what it is the other person is experiencing. And at the same time, you're displaying to them that this person does want to understand me. They do, want to learn more, and they do want to understand things from my point of view. So I guess to dive a little bit deeper into a mirror for those who don't quite know what a mirror is, tell us what a mirror is, Brandon.
All right. Well, please forgive me, but I'm going to start by telling you what a mirror is not, because I feel like it's pretty common idea in the business world, and it's usually related directly to body language. Like when people hear the term mirror, then essentially that equates to becoming a mirror for your counterpart, whether you're mimicking their pacing in the conversation, which is, some stuff that even, in NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, they talk about that a little bit. And then in body language, they talk about mirroring, right? If they're sitting back in their chair, you should sit back. If they have their ankles crossed, you should cross your ankles. And that is not what mirroring is. That is not the way that we talk about using it. And, to no disrespect to the people that have put that stuff into the environment, but the way that we personally feel about it here, that stuff is useless. I mean, if you're to the place where let me mimic their tone of voice and mimic their body language and mimic everything they're doing, they'll like me better. We don't put a lot of merit into that. But to your point, how we use mirroring, the easiest way to look at it is repeating the last 3 to 5 words of what they said. That's the easiest, kind of quick, down and dirty way to look at it. Kind of advanced, nuanced version of the skill is to use no more than 5, but 3 to 5 words to repeat the gist of what they said. So either you're taking the last 3 to 5 words, word for word, or you're taking the gist of what they said and then laying it out. And of course, tone of voice plays into that as well. We like to say that negotiation mastery is in tonality.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to, how important tonality actually is, I would just encourage everyone, because I did this myself and had great fun in actually trying out some mirrors with people. And even when you're in a conversation with, your girlfriend, your mum, your mate down the pub or whatever it is, just try it out. Try, when you're in a conversation, just repeating those last, if someone tells you something, I watched the football game last night. You watched the football game last night, and then see what happens, because it's really, really interesting how people will just continue talking, continue opening up about what it is that what they did. And when you think of that in a sales situation, in a negotiation situation, it's really a powerful way to gather some more information. So, but yeah, a great thing to test out and really see that it does work pretty much immediately. But then, there's tone of voice as well, which is another key topic in Never Split the Difference, another key topic that you guys use at the Black Swan Group. So tell us a little bit about tone of voice. Does it matter? Does it matter how we actually inflect our voices in negotiation situations? What are your views on that, Brandon?
Well, first I'll start with, I'm sure this is a cliche that everyone has heard at some point in their life, probably when you're a little kid and you heard it from your mom or your grandma or even your teacher at school. But, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stand that cliche. I mean, and I don't even really know why, but I absolutely I hate that phrase. And maybe it's because I hate to be reminded of it. But the reality is it's true. I mean, it's amazing what you can say to people if you can frame it properly with your tone. And I just want to back up a little bit and go back to mirrors, because I thought you made a great point in regards to when you're using mirrors, subconsciously, it makes you more interested in what they're saying. Like you're more dialed in that moment on your own side because you've used a mirror. And I think that's 1,000% true. And even more so for our listeners, that if you haven't tried mirrors yet and you're thinking about trying mirrors, I want you to know the first several times you do it, it's probably going to be the most awkward you ever feel talking to anybody. It is going to feel weird. I can tell by the look on your face, Cameron, the first time you did it, you probably felt a little awkward. Do you remember the first time you mirrored? How did you feel when you did it?
Yeah, it feels weird. It feels like, you're in a natural conversation and suddenly you're trying to add in this thing to like a little technique, and it feels a bit weird. But what I was even more surprised with is that it worked first time. So yeah, it will feel weird, but over time, as you start to employ it, it just becomes a kind of natural part of your conversational style, I guess.
Yeah, and interesting. And it's kind of the second part of that. Have you been playing with testing out different ways to say mirrors just to see what effect it has in the conversation? Have you been messing with that at all?
In terms of the tone of voice?
Yeah.
I haven't, I normally just kind of do it in my own conversational style, but I can imagine saying it in a certain way, or in a, in a, maybe if you're in a, a bit more of a calm, relaxed way compared to maybe a bit more of an inquisitive, kind of diving in kind of that way. I can imagine it creates a different response.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my personal favorite, and when we teach this and we're going through it the first time with anybody, you're never going to go wrong. You're pretty much never going to go wrong if you have that upward inflection, inquisitive tone, like you just mentioned. Like if you say it as if there's a question mark on the end, it's going to get you a long way. And what people hear, and we talk about this a lot in negotiation as well, but you're really starting to change the face of your interactions when you can start to decipher between what you say versus what they hear. And what you need them to hear sometimes is not exactly the words that need to come out of your mouth. But again, it goes back to creating these emotional moments. And you mentioned that upward inflection, that inquisitive tone. And you might have just said, oh, the football game last night, right? That might have been always what you said, but you put that upward inquisitive tone on it. And what they hear in their mind is, hey, I'm really interested in what you thought of the football game or how last night went for you. Do you mind telling me more about it? Because I'd love to hear it. And it's amazing that you say 3 to 5 words, and then all the stuff that they hear in their brain is this big package. And all you did was the football game last night. And they hear all of this additional stuff in their mind that makes them want to talk to you.
Absolutely. It's it's amazing. It kind of flips off this little switch in the mind, and even by just saying a couple of words, it's like you're saying a whole sentence and really trying to dive a little bit deeper in that. So I guess it all comes down to a lot of the substance from what you teach, Brandon. It's a lot of it's empathy, right? So it's being able to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're talking with, that you're negotiating with, and kind of understand things from their point of view. So my question is, in a negotiation, you don't necessarily want the same things, which means obviously there's going to be an area of conflict. There's going to be an area of conflicting interests. So to be empathetic, do you have to agree with, your counterpart?
Great question. The short answer is no. And I'll start with, this comparison between empathy and sympathy. In these days, sympathy and empathy are seen as almost synonyms. And I mean, if you go to pick up just about any dictionary that's been written in the last 5 to 10 years, you're going to find that the definitions are very similar. The way that we use empathy in negotiation, as you already know, it is not sympathy. They are not the same thing. Sympathy is very much, oh, you're sad, so I'm sad too, right? Or you're frustrated, and I feel your frustration, and that's sympathy, feeling what they feel. And then, however, whatever that does to you in the moment is up to you. It's fully in your control at that time, but it's definitely about feeling what they're feeling. Empathy is much more about, the way we use it in negotiation is much more about articulation. The expression of empathy has much more to do with, can you actually put the words together that accurately describe what they see? And even more so, what makes empathy so difficult is because, 8 or 9 times out of 10, what they see is going to be completely crazy to you. Their point of view isn't going to make sense to you at all. And it's like, you're going to think like, why would they think like that anyway? That makes no sense. Like, logically, I can't put it together. The problem is, on their side of the table, all this crazy stuff that you think of, that's logical to them. That's logic. That's a whole, we could talk for a whole nother hour about how logic plays in, because there's definitely a lot of personal bias that plays into logic most of the time. But yeah, and empathy, being able to see what they see and then accurately articulate it, and much more further beyond, I understand. You can't look at somebody and try to show empathy and say to them, I understand, because that is not an accurate articulation of what they see. So you got to be able to describe it. Once you can articulate it, then you're really getting to the point where not only are you using empathy well, but then the other side, they feel empathy from you. They like, and you know what? They're trying really hard to figure out what it is I see and why I see it that way. And again, it goes back, this agreement thing. No, you don't have to agree. That's one of the beautiful things about empathy, is you can use this tool that genuinely changes the mindset of your counterpart, and at no time do you agree with them. I think I'm trying to think of the psychologist, Carl. I can't think of his name. But there's another guy by the name of Daniel Goleman, who's a pretty famous psychologist. I'm sure. I don't know if you've heard of him, Cameron.
Yeah, the emotional intelligence guy, right?
That's it. That's it. And what he's done, his work on empathy, and the way that you use it, and the difference that it makes in your interactions. It's groundbreaking stuff. Which is why it's been years ago since he did it, but we're still talking about it for good reason, because he's done a lot of great things. And Daniel Goleman's version of cognitive empathy. He's got several different types. He's got emotional empathy, and there's a couple different ways that he categorizes it. But cognitive empathy is what we use. The way that he describes it is what we use. And what I think is really interesting is Daniel Goleman says that the people that are best at empathy are in fact sociopaths, because they know they can use it to get you to do what they want you to do. And if they can articulate some understanding to you, then you are putty in their hands. Yep. And so while we do not advocate using your powers for evil, just know that that was one of the things about negotiation, right? And one of the things about always being cautious, because what do you do when you run into that person? But empathy is a powerful tool. It is a powerful tool, and we use it simply because it works.
Yep. And it's funny. It's you see, or you see all the time these things in the media. Two big CEOs or whatever clashing and then coming together. But if maybe one of them was a little bit more clued up in the the power of just displaying a little bit of empathy and trying to see things from the other the other person's point of view, and display to them in a real way, look, I can see what's going on. I can see your situation. Wow. That must really make you feel frustrated. That must really make you feel, not satisfied with the current situation. So what can we do together to come to a resolution here? And automatically it kind of, I guess it brings the whole vibe from one of conflict and confrontation to a little bit more collaboration, and, let's work together to get an outcome that works for us both. But on that same coin, In your view, Brandon, why should we never split the difference in that regard? If we've got a certain outcome that we want to achieve, why should we not, I guess, settle for the middle ground, or settle for the outcome that's not our desired outcome? And I guess on that same coin, why should we never accept a bad deal?
Great question. Great question. So, starting with splitting the difference. The biggest problem with never splitting the difference means that one or both sides has compromised. And the problem with compromising is it breeds poor implementation. Compromise breeds animosity. Even if it's not so bad in the moment, that's something that grows, almost like an infection. And that's one of the biggest problems with compromise, because when you compromise, you know you've compromised. You hate the fact that you've compromised. You spend a lot of time second guessing yourself and what you could have done not to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got a long-term relationship, the fact that you compromise is going to come back to bite you at some point. There's going to be something else that the other side wants you to do, because now you've conditioned them to know that you will compromise.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll ask you to compromise again. And then secondly, even if they don't right away, you're gonna be performing somewhere, or even they might fall short on a term, and your mind's gonna go right back to, I gave this up to make this deal happen, and you can't even be on time for a monthly meeting, or whatever it is, right? It's gonna equate to you being mad about something else. It's a great way to start that level of, it's never one big thing that pushes us over the top when we lose our temper.
Mm-hmm.
It's generally a series of small things that has led up to that moment. Compromising on terms is a great way to start this animosity train, these small little things that add up that eventually get you to blow up 3 months down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the big problems with compromise. The other part of that thing, win-win negotiation, I think those go hand in hand in a lot of ways in a lot of people's minds. And first off, I don't think there is any such thing as win-win. I don't think that actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, there's a phrase in negotiation that we say, anyone that offers to split the difference is probably a poor judge of distance. So if they've thrown a high anchor, or they're the type of negotiator, they throw a high anchor, low anchor, chances are that middle is going to be closer to what they actually want anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just using this hard term to manipulate you in the moment. So, you may, oh yeah, we split the difference, it's okay. Well, who threw the number first? How did you end up in this place of splitting the difference, right? Is it something that you actually calculated because the middle was close to what you wanted? Or are you reacting to the number that they threw at you, right? Mm-hmm. So that whole thing plays in the mind. But going back to this win-win and it not actually existing, first of all, you never know if you got a win-win until you start to implement. One of the things we talk about in the book is yes is nothing without how. An agreement, a deal that's made is only as good as its implementation. You can agree to whatever you want up to wazoo, but if you can't implement, nobody's going to make any money. And, there's been plenty of people that are in a negotiation world that have walked out of a room thinking they had a win-win, and 3 and 6 months later felt like they lost. And so they didn't really know the position that they were in when they first walked out of the room. They didn't figure it out till they started implementing. So one of the reasons we say win-win, this probably doesn't even exist, is because when you first come to terms, you can't see far enough down the timeline to know if both sides won.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, going back to this whole idea of compromise, and one of the reasons why we're bringing, we've brought these hostage negotiation techniques to the private sector, because hostage negotiation is all about non-compromise. It's an environment where intense negotiations have to take place,
mm-hmm.
and you're not compromising your position. So how do we translate that to business? So
yep.
You never want to compromise. You never want to be in a place where you're shooting for a win-win, because you're probably blind to what's actually going on. and then, this breeding of animosity or poor implementation because of compromise and splitting the difference. You never want to leave yourself in that place. One of the great ways in negotiation to start to overcome some of this, or I shouldn't say start, but one of the techniques to focus on when overcoming a challenge like this is to negotiate about implementation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where people drop the ball most often. One of the most overlooked aspects of negotiation is, what is the implementation going to look like? We get so caught up on our terms and we get to this point counterpoint interaction that it's easy to put somebody in a split the difference mode, because you just make a hard demand,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, either come up or come down to where my demand is.
Yep.
And it's easy to get into this back and forth bargaining, as opposed to having actual conversations on what it's going to take to make the deal work.
It's a really, really great point. And I think, if you can come to that decision, thinking a little bit further down the line, as you said, if someone's always late for meetings, or if someone, they're not abiding by the terms that they initially agreed to, try and get that into the agreement too. So I think, that wraps it up beautifully, actually. And in terms of negotiation, there is really no win-win. You really want to go after what it is that you want to achieve from the negotiation, and the only way to do that is going to be to really develop the right skills and the right practices. And a great way to start is Never Split the Difference, the book. And reach out to Brandon if you're watching this and you're looking for some kind of negotiation tactics or any kind of implementation of how to make this stuff really come to life in your own business. But yeah, definitely a great place to start is the book. So for anyone else watching, for anyone who wants to get in touch, Brandon, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me on, Cameron. And you made a great point earlier when I brought up, how do you be a good negotiator? I mentioned being born a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
you talked about how, emotional intelligence is something you can improve late in life. So one thing that I find a lot of, I'm very enthusiastic about, is they say you can improve your emotional intelligence into your late 80s.
Wow.
I figure I got about, 50 something more years left to continue to be good at that skill. So I'm very happy about that. And as far as contacting us, our website is Black Swan Ltd, like limited.com, blackswanltd.com. Also, we have a weekly blog, comes out every Tuesday at 9 a.m. your local time. It's called The Edge. You can sign up for it on our website, or you can also text FBI Empathy, all capital letters, all one word, FBI Empathy, to 22828. It's a text message sign up. You text that to 22828. You'll be prompted to sign up for the subscription, and then you're off to the races there, and you'll be hearing from us every Tuesday. It's also, our blog is also the place where we put out all of our initial advertisements. If we're going to do, like we're doing an event in LA in November, and we started advertising that on the blog first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great way to kind of keep up with, what's coming out next for Black Swan.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much. And we should do this again sometime, because it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate it, man. It was fun to be on today.